Hey everyone, and welcome back to the ATD Movie Channel. I'm Tony, and today I'll be reviewing Darkest Hour, the World War II film starring Gary Oldman as British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Let's jump right into it. Before going to the movies to watch this, I really didn't know much about the film. I was pleasantly surprised in some ways and disappointed in others. Let me start with the obvious. Gary Oldman's performance in this film is remarkable. He actually looks like Winston Churchill, and I'm not sure if he gained weight or he was just wearing makeup. That's how convincing he was in the role. He also nails the historical figure's dialect, his movements as an old man, mannerisms, and that way that he smokes the cigars throughout the entire film. Kristen Scott Thomas' performance is solid. She holds her own as Winston Churchill's wife. Ben Mendelsohn and Stephen Delaney also give great performances in supporting roles. Lily James, who was made famous in Disney's Cinderella, does okay, but she's really not given much to do in this film, and I'll touch on that in a minute. What I also really enjoyed about the movie was the production design. I was personally transported to 1940s England through the way of the costumes and the locations. Some of the locations highlighted in the film we know, and others we really don't. Specifically speaking, there's a bunker where a lot of the wartime strategies are written up by all the different members of parliament, and I thought that had a unique look and feel. It almost felt like claustrophobic knowing that we were underground in this bunker for a good part of the movie. There's other little things like the cars featured in the film that take you back to that time period. And what little special effects there are in the movie are really well done, specifically during the war between Germany and France. Cinematographer Bruno Del Bonel does really well in this film, not just from camera angles, but his use of lighting and shadows and just an overall washed out color palette. It made me, as an audience member, feel just as cold as the wartime depicted in the film. Brilliant move on the part of the cinematographer. I also really enjoyed the score by Oscar winner Dario Marianelli. He is so good in the way that he uses music to tell the story. And rarely does the score soften up. A lot of times on this channel I talk about a score that goes up and down with the story or the emotions of the characters. It's just not the case here because I think that the score has to be as strong as the man in which the film is depicting. There's a lot about the film I didn't like overall. I was really bored, and I have to be honest, a lot of this is personal taste. I think it's difficult for filmmakers to make political and wartime strategies look interesting, and I really wasn't engaged. There's just so much dialogue in this film with such little intrigue that honestly they had a hard time keeping my attention. And also the relationships depicted in the film are really weak. I mean, I knew that the movie was going to be all about Winston Churchill. I went in there with that foregone conclusion. But the only real relationship that's explored at any level is with him and his wife. And that's okay if that's what the entire film was about, but it's not. The relationship with the king is barely explored, and that may have been the most fascinating part of the movie. That was their ticket into a more interesting and compelling storyline. Also, the relationship with his typist, played by Lily James, doesn't go anywhere. She's a big part of the film's marketing and the trailers, but the relationship falls completely flat. And I think what's insulting to me is they tried to heighten this relationship with a few scenes with the one-on-one between the characters that just fell flat. And I think another part of the film that I was frustrated with is the sheer lack of any character arc. Winston Churchill is the same man at the end of the film that he was at the beginning. They just spend a good 2 hours telling us why he is that way. And maybe that's the point. He's got to stand his ground and not change his mind and do what he believes in. But if there's no internal conflict that's portrayed through the film, then why do we care? He's going to do what he wants to do anyway. And to be clear, the movie does try to show internal conflict, but it's just laughable. And this is somewhat of a spoiler, but his internal conflict is solved by a ride on a subway. I didn't buy it. You don't go 2.5 hours in this film trying to solve this internal struggle of whether or not to go to war with a ride on the subway. And my last comment on this film is that there's just so many better World War II films. Even this year, we were treated to one of the best that I've ever seen related to World War II in Dunkirk. And what I found to be so ironic is Darkest Hour talks a lot about the events in the Dunkirk film, and all it made me want to do is come home and watch the Christopher Nolan film. So I guess what I'm saying is, maybe we didn't need an entire film about this prime minister's struggle of whether or not to go to war. Maybe if it's part of a bigger story, it's sufficient enough. I don't know, that's my personal opinion. All in all, this movie's not going to be remembered for its plot or the spectacle. It's going to be remembered for Gary Oldman's Oscar-worthy performance of a man that we don't really learn that much about in the American education system. For me personally, there's just so many other great stories of this horrific time in our history that I'd prefer watching. But that's just me. I didn't enjoy the film, and I can't recommend it. So, have you seen Darkest Hour? Let me know in the comments below. And I'd love to find out if this movie accurately depicts what the events of that time really were. Let me know again in the comments below. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be notified of content uploaded regularly. You could find other movie reviews on the channel as well. Thanks so much for watching my review to Darkest Hour. I'll talk to you soon.